feeling stuck, trapped by barriers holding you back from reaching your full potential? Well, let's bust through those barriers so that you can live your best life. Hi, I'm Matt Brooks, founder of Matt Brooks Coaching, and I'm passionate about helping people overcome barriers to achieve success. Join me for insights, strategies, and inspiring stories as we explore practical tips and powerful tools to unlock your true potential. This is the Barrier Busting Podcast. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I am very happy to have my guest from last week back this week. If you weren't listening, my guest is Dr. Jean-Ron LaFond. He's spent his life in the opera and theater world. He was an opera singer and now is a teacher all over the world. I'll read what his background is. He's also, we call him Ron, those of us who know him. But he has both a master's and doctorate from the University of Michigan and a bachelor's degree from the famous Westminster Choir College. Having performed over 40 operatic roles as a baritone and given at least as many performances of oratorio solos, he has also presented over 400 recitals in his prestigious career. He's worked as a stage director and also as an experienced theater actor. Throughout his career as a performer, Dr. LaFond maintained a strong presence as a teacher and mentor. He has taught at the University of Florida, East Carolina University, the University of Delaware, and Westminster Choir College. Ron currently works as a freelance teacher, regularly presenting masterclasses all over the world, as well as private study all over the world. And he's developed his own philosophy for teaching singers that incorporates principles from both vocal science and martial arts, which I think is really fascinating. Ron, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you again. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure.
We were talking about the root causes of performance anxiety the last time, and I want to take that to another level in terms now of coping mechanisms and strategies for coping with performance anxiety. And I want to remind the listeners that my first show of this series was on performance anxiety in general, the kind we all feel. You don't have to be a professional performer to experience this. You might need to give a toast at a wedding or give a presentation at work or, church or something, and you suddenly go through performance anxiety. If you listen to the first episode I did on this, there's a bunch of tips as to how to deal with that, but we're going to talk more. We've been talking about how professional performers deal with it because I think there's a lot to learn from that. So Ron, we talked about performance anxiety and how it, comes up, and a lot of times it's this, what you called in tennis, scar tissue, which is really memories of when things went wrong. And I mentioned that anxiety is often caused by fear of anxiety. That's pretty common. What strategies do you recommend for your students for managing performance anxiety before stepping out on stage? And then we'll come back to the same question and talk about it before stepping out on the tennis court. Because I should mention, for anybody who didn't listen last week, Ron is also a lifelong serious tennis player, like the real deal. And so he can speak both from the musical perspective and the performing arts perspective and the sports perspective. So again, Ron, what strategies do you recommend for managing performance anxiety before stepping on stage?
Just like anything else, preparation is the most important thing. You have to know your material backwards and forwards such that you can be in a place where if things go a little bit awry, which they often do, you have the presence of mind to be able to adapt.
It's kind of like a muscle memory, right? It's kind of like,
exactly.
If you're really well prepared, I talked about this in my show, you create a kind of muscle memory that will save your butt in those moments, right?
That's it. Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a tenor right now on a role that's coming up, very difficult role. And we've spent the last year and a half working on this role because it's a role that is a bit beyond what is done up to this point, I received a text message from him just today where he said, quote, where is it? I'm feeling way more confident for next week, which is something else that he has to do. Yeah. He said it in a very wonderful way, that he's been thinking about something. And where did he say? Yeah, there it is. I've been doing I tested a little bit today anyway, just to see if the contemplating I've been doing about separating head and chest voices, very, very specific, has marinated. And the idea is that he's been thinking about these concepts that we've been talking about, thinking about them, just imagining them, just
Mhm.
in his thoughts. How does it feel to feel the separation of these two elements? And he said he was wondering if those thoughts had marinated into actual physical experience. And he sang and he sent me a couple of recordings, and it's extraordinary the growth that is made. He's made that step into a feeling like, okay, my body has absorbed this now.
Isn't that
And so,
wonderful?
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, and for this to work, I mean, this is a singer I've worked with for 14 years, and we have this back and forth going on where it's his process that I'm guiding him through, but we have this back and forth. And so that sensation of it's internalized, it's physically uh, muscle memory now. So, and that means that the act of singing is physical memory. The act of moving on stage, of acting, is physical memory. The music itself is physical memory. The text, the expression, all of that is already prepared. Great singers do that. They are absolutely perfectly prepared because when they go in, they're going to meet with other elements, and then they have to be able to navigate that. So they cannot be worried about whether or not their voices can do the job. They can't be worried about whether or not their memory of the text is a problem. So first and foremost, preparation.
Yeah, I had a
That
friend
is
in classical music say to me that the thing is, you never know what's going to happen on stage, no matter how well
that's right.
everybody's prepared. Things happen in the audience that you can't expect, and they may throw you. And so,
Yeah.
being fully prepared isn't just about overcoming anxiety; it's being able to handle the unexpected in the moment. Is that right? Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely, man. I could tell you stories of things that went totally wrong on stage, but you find a way to make it work.
Yeah,
The audience doesn't know.
right,
But when you go backstage and you and your colleagues are laughing your asses off because it's like, how did we get through that moment, right?
right.
But that's because what you were supposed to do on stage was so worked out between you all that when something went way off, we were able to figure out a way to get out of that problem in the moment. You know,
All right,
actors with it.
let's shift to tennis because you made the point last week that I think is really important. The tennis we're talking about, it's a solo thing. It's like a soloist. You're
Yeah.
on your own out there, and what I'm sure there's similar issues in terms of being well prepared, but there's other
Yes.
things that can come into one's head before stepping out onto a court in a match. What strategies do you recommend for people playing tennis to get themselves calm and focused if they're experiencing any anxiety before a match?
Yeah, you have to have a very clear idea of what you're doing, what the process is. When you walk into a tennis court, you and your opponent work out, you have a few minutes where you warm up together, right? This is the moment that you get yourself in preparation mode because you heading back and forth with your opponent, it's it's a moment where you're getting information about how this person hits the ball, what are the tendencies. You practice volleys. How do they volley? Is the backhand good? Is the forehand better? All of this stuff is information. So instead of being nervous, you have tasks, very specific tasks.
Interesting. Keep you
So during this
focused.
entire time, that keep you focused. Okay, so I'm hitting the ball back and forth. If I'm empty-minded, what's going to happen? I'm going to fill my mind with, oh, this guy hits a pretty good forehand. What am I going to do about that? Or maybe he's going to kill me. That happened to me in one match where I avoid this guy's forehand, and it wasn't even that strong a forehand because I was told he had a good forehand, and I ended up losing that match, and I shouldn't have. This is a match I should have
Interesting.
won. Yeah, so I never did that again. So the thing is that if somebody has a good forehand, let's see what it does. Right? It may be strong, but is it consistent?
So this
Let's
is a
play with it.
version. This is a version of being present in the moment, which is one of the tips that I
Yes,
gave in my show.
exactly.
Clearing your
Exactly.
mind out, and what are you seeing right now? What are you hearing right now? What are you feeling right now? What is in the moment to get out of your head?
That's
And that's
it.
exactly what you're saying here, right?
That's how you prepare because the thing is that your game is one thing, but your game has to adapt to somebody else's game, the person you're going to play with. So you use that time to get information. So now when you go to your seat just before you're going to hit your first serve or the other guys going to hit their first serve, you already have a strategy, right? And so I've seen how this guy hit his forehand and backhand. I think that's his weak side. So I'm going to test that. Maybe for the first game you play, the guy proves you wrong. Okay. Maybe it's the other way around. Let's try this. A match is a
So
journey.
in other words, you're
right?
very focused on what you're doing at the moment, and
Yes.
that in and of itself is pushing the bugaboos away, right? Is that
That's right. Because if you're in the moment and you have tasks, right? Tasks being like, oh, I was wrong about his backhand. It's pretty strong. Maybe I should try his forehand. That's something that you're planning to do, as opposed to, oh my God, well, what am I going to do about this guy's backhand? It's much better than I thought. You see, so you're taking information and you're processing it. You might lose the first set and end up winning the match pretty easily because you're taking information in. It's a martial arts technique. The great martial artists used to say, whenever I face an opponent, I always lose the first time because I'm taking information about how this person fights.
Interesting.
Right?
But either way, however you're doing this, I think this applies to any situation where you might feel performance anxiety. Be present in the moment.
Exactly.
Focus on what your task is. It's going to help you get your brain cleared out and empty
That's
that mind of that stuff. So that's really important. Now, as for opera singers, I know that they have to do all kinds of warm-ups to get their voice in shape before they perform. Are there any specific warm-up techniques that you tell your students to do that will help them calm nerves?
We always begin with breathing. First and foremost, we do breathing exercises. Become conscious of your breath, right? So you breathe in, you breathe out. That's all there is. One, breathe in, breathe out. One, breathe in, breathe out. There's not 2, 3, 4. It's just being conscious of how your body is moving. So
now,
it's fundamental.
Let me ask you, because I talk about breathing in my thing about breathing in through the nose and out through the lips. You know, we often make fun of that, but there's a reason for that, because breathing in through your nose kind of forces you naturally to breathe from the diaphragm rather than the lungs, which gets more oxygen in your body. Is that what you're doing with them? Are they breathing in through the nose? Or, I mean, singers know how to get to their diaphragm easier than most people. So what is how do you have them breathe?
There are different mindsets about that. There are moments where you don't have enough time to breathe through your nose, that you have to breathe through your mouth, especially in a very quick breath and a very fast music, for example. But in general, when you can, yes, you breathe through your nose, and there are lots of reasons for that. Yes, just the resistance of the airstream from the air passage of the nose, which is tighter, creates an increase in how the diaphragm works to have air come in. Okay. So your body engages much more strongly. Like sometimes I have a singer do this, which is another way of getting the whole process of the entire body engaging to get air in.
All right,
and
so let's shift to tennis then before a match. I imagine there's some breathing involved too, but what other techniques do you recommend to tennis players to stay calm before they have to go out into the storm?
Right. So we started with, so then you are about to step into the court. Hopefully you've taken some time to warm up before your time to warm up with your opponent, because that's different, right? You need to be in shape for what the match begins when you start your warm up, right? Strategy, mentality, how you greet your opponent, all of these kinds of things work into the match. So I often say, after you've done the exercises that you need to do to get your body prepared, that you warmed up, you stretched, you've hit a few balls, whatever, breathing. I take that from Djokovic, and it's extremely important. I say, sit down for a second, close your eyes, and just breathe in, breathe out, and see what it feels like to be really calm. Yeah. Because the hardest part about tennis is when you have, for example, a long rally. Between you and your partner, you've hit 42 balls. You're running around, and as you're running, you're gradually hyperventilating, right? So you need to find a way to take air in to prevent yourself from losing oxygen in the brain. That way you stay clear and you stay focused on what you're doing. Most of what you're doing is going to be almost reactionary, right? The thing is going so quickly that you're going to react. But react from habit, because you've learned strategy, you've learned tactics. Mm-hmm. But you're going to make the right choices in tactic if you are breathing and your brain has enough oxygen. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that's why breathing is so crucial.
Now, you were talking a minute about, getting your focus on the moment, and so you're not focusing on your nerves and all that. But let's take that same idea in terms of turning away from fear and making enjoyment, because I think it seems we're better. You're better opera singer, better tennis player if you're having fun doing it, and it's not like a oppressive thing you've got to constantly work through. So, in that same vein of how to clear your mind and focus on being in the moment, how do you shift your focus from fear towards enjoyment?
That's a very great question. I wish I had the perfect answer for that. But it's memory. It's a memory of what it feels like to enjoy the game. I mean, I play pretty much every day with friends, and I enjoy it. And my best tennis is when I'm playing with my friends. I mean, I've played with a 27-year-old who was a young professional, and we end up splitting sets. I'm 59 years old, and the kid asked me, "How old are you?" He couldn't believe that I was as old as I was, running around the way. But I was just having fun. But then I went to a tournament not too long after. I started to concentrate on winning the match, and I ended up losing, right? So what I've learned from that is that match at home with my friends or a match in a tournament, if I'm not having fun, it's not worth it. Because the pros tell you the same thing. If they're having a good time out there, they tend to make the right choice. So it seems backwards, but if you want to win the match, don't concentrate on winning the match. Mm-hmm. Concentrate on just enjoying the point, Yeah. The most famous player in the world right now is this young Spanish guy named Carlos Alcaraz, who has the biggest smile on his face all the time. And everybody loves him because he smiles. Because he's trying to enjoy it. If he has a day when he's not enjoying it, it's visible, like he's kind of serious, we know he's going to lose. And it's really much that, is don't forget why you're doing this. Professional singers or tennis players go through the same exact thing. They concentrate, I have to win this match because that's my salary for this week. That's my salary. That's how I'm going to pay my coach. And they are very specific, and it's not very different. I had my first voice lesson and my first tennis lesson the same day. I was 15. And so those two things have been fused for a long time. And I didn't know why, but they're so similar in a way. Top opera singers are few. The very top people are few. And they're going to be millionaires. They're going to make lots of money. They don't worry about that so much. They can try to enjoy, as much as they can, but they have their problems too. There's expectation and all that. But the people under that top layer, they have to make a living. And there are people now who are taking 3 buses to get to a tournament, just to make money for this week to pay the rent. We don't know that side of professional tennis. So, and that breeds anxiety. Those players who are playing what are called challenges, if you haven't seen the movie with Zendaya, which is a very interesting movie, quite true to life. These people who are like number 1,000 in the world, and they're professional, and they're playing these lower tournaments to just pay the rent.
Same thing in professional golf. I knew a couple of guys who were in professional golf who didn't make it, but were in it for years, and that's a tough life, man. They didn't make a lot of money, and they're staying in the worst hotels. Exactly.
The same, and then you have to go play against somebody, who's staying in a luxury hotel, who's got 3 coaches, a physio, and all kind of stuff, and you don't. You're traveling alone. Right. Thing happens to a singer who's presenting themselves to an audition or going to do a gig. And they have a day job for 8 hours, and then they have to take, 2 trains and a bus and a taxi to get to this gig. They arrive, they're tired. Meanwhile, their colleagues who are singing in this gig and who are at a higher echelon, and they look like they're having the best time of their lives. So all of these things play into the singer's mind or the musician's mind or the actor's mind or whatever, or the executive or the secretary, There is expectation.
And I think what you're saying is that there is, and it's interesting you bring this up, because stress and anxiety that might be, you might think of it as performance anxiety, can also come from other places.
Absolutely.
Other elements in your life. We're going to take a quick break, and that's going to be a great place to pick up, because I want to talk about how we deal with anxiety on a daily basis, or what things we can do on a daily basis that will add to our armor against anxiety when it really kicks in. So we're going to do that in just a minute. But first, a quick break. Hang tight.
Feeling overwhelmed? Struggling to find balance in your daily life? At Matt Brooks Coaching, we get it, and we can help. With over 25 years of nonprofit executive experience and an MSW with a clinical focus, Matt Brooks offers personalized coaching designed to help you rise above your challenges and live your best life. Whether you aim to advance your career, enhance your skills, or simply find more clarity and peace, Matt is here to be your partner and ally. Visit mattbrookscoaching.com to book your free discovery session today. Take the first step towards a brighter tomorrow.
Okay, so right before the break, Dr. LaFont brought up an interesting issue about outside stressors that affect you in your performance, and anybody in any job really, but since we're focusing on performance anxiety specifically, these outside stressors. And I talked about this in my first show on this topic, and I've talked about it in other shows on other topics, that we do have some things we can do daily that we can incorporate regularly into our lives that help us, fight against overwhelming stress and anxiety when it kicks in. And, of course, I talked about, everybody's sick of hearing it, but exercise, sleep, and healthy diet, right? Everybody's sick of hearing that because we say that with everything, but there's a reason, because those things really make a difference. I find if I'm exercising regularly, I sleep better. You know what I mean? And if I eat more healthy, I feel better when I'm exercising. I mean, it's a cycle, right? It's a circle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Absolutely.
So, aside from exercise and sleep and good diet, which we talk about all the time, are there specific daily habits or routines that you recommend to your students to manage anxiety in terms of a consistent way to manage it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the ways that I deal with things, because being essentially a professional voice teacher, I find myself in the flow of voice teaching. I've been doing it for about 40 years now, from teaching very young people to teaching top professional. And I've gotten to a point where it's very hard for me to remember in the last couple of years when I've had a bad voice lesson, right? Because it's something I know really well, and I interact with new students in a way much better now than I did before. So that's a flow. So one of the things that takes stress out of me is the voice lessons I teach. That's one. But that's not going to help a lot of people. What I find helps a lot is something that I've been doing since I started martial arts. Personally, for me, is Tai Chi meditation. So Tai Chi meditation can be done still, or it can be done in movement. That's for me. That's something that I do. And if you're interested in that, you can go and find a wonderful Tai Chi Kung Fu teacher. I know a few.
And I mentioned in my show, one of the tips was meditation, and it's not something that I'm into, but a lot of people I know that are into it. The one thing that I can say seems to be a common thread is that they're pretty calm in general. People that do meditation on a daily basis have a certain calmness to them in general. So, I think that's a really potent tool for fighting anxiety. So
right. And there are different kinds of meditation. I mentioned Tai Chi meditation. That's for me because that's something I do. That's something I practice, right? I find tennis to be meditative because I enjoy it so much and I don't put any stress on it. I've stopped stressing myself about the tournament, but with the tournament, it's about meeting new people, having fun. So I've taken the stresses off. I play better at tournaments now. So it can be anything. It can be absolutely anything that you enjoy. Some people run. I live not very far away from the sea. One of the ways I meditate when I don't do necessarily Tai Chi meditation, I take a walk by the sea. Like you said, I was born by the beach. I'm pretty much the same distance from the beach right now than I was when I was a kid in Haiti.
Nice.
It's literally a 10-minute walk, and I'm in front of the Mediterranean.
Nice.
And that nothing calms me more than that, right? So that's a meditation in itself. I go to the tennis court via my walk in front of the ocean, and then when I arrive at the club, I am ready to have a good time. So there are so many ways. The other thing I'd say, and from life experience, I guess, get rid of anything that you don't need in your life that causes you stress. Right?
Like what? Can you give us an example?
Oh, sure, it can be someone who claims to be your friend, but gives you more stress than they give you good feelings, right?
Right.
Um, Life is about the processing of energy, and you have to surround yourself with elements that fill your day. And it may sound a bit selfish, but it's not. You know, we
I
tend to go ahead.
no, I was going to say, what a brilliant thing to say. I've never. Life is about the process of energy.
Yeah,
That's what you just said. I've never thought of it that way. That's wow. I'm gonna. Folks, think on that one.
yeah.
I'm going to think on it too because that's
But
brilliant.
we often hold on to things because we think they're absolutely necessary. You know,
Yeah.
I'll give you a very simple example. Radical. I've been on Facebook since it came out in 2004, so that's 20 years. I've had my business profile based on Facebook. I've met friends on Facebook that I haven't seen forever. So Facebook became this thing that I felt was just a part of my life. But over the past few months, I realized that Facebook has been causing me more stress than anything because it's an environment where you're not necessarily going to find yourself having uh, good debates with people. Like, you know, I can sit down with somebody who has a completely different political point of view than me. We communicate, we express our differences, and while we're having a beer together, you know, it's not a big deal. We're not going to agree on every single thing, but you can have that talk, and hopefully, at the end of a debate like that, you both come out a little bit more informed, and it depends your friendship. I have friends who are diametrically opposed to me in terms of politics,
Yeah.
but we're really good friends. I don't get rid of those people because I know I can have a talk with them, and we come out learning. But I came to realize that Facebook was a very stressful energy in my life. And I thought, well, okay, goodbye, Facebook. So I have deleted my Facebook account.
I did this
And
a year ago, and I want to tell you, you're going to be really happy about that. I mean, I'm back on some
yeah,
social media because I have my coaching business now,
sure.
and it's a great way to communicate with people. But I got back on reluctantly because I found the exact same experience from Facebook. It was great for me to connect with old friends, but it got to a point where it was just too stressful. And I think social media in general has empowered people to be able to speak up in ways they couldn't before. But unfortunately, the darker sides of human nature has caused social media to create a lot of angry people who can quietly sit in their house and say the kind of shit you would never say to somebody to their face.
That's right.
And it's very destructive. And I think we all
Yeah, it
know
can be
this
very
now. We
toxic.
all know why. I don't even know why we still debate this. We all know this. And I wish we could just ramp that down. But I think it's,
Absolutely. But some people feel empowered by having a platform of some kind, even though it's a
yeah.
bunch of people that
Well,
know.
but I think your point here, which is the one to really drill home, is that if you're going to incorporate daily routines into your life that you're doing consciously to help you handle stress and anxiety better, shed the things that are causing stress, shed the things you can shed that are causing. There's always going to be some things that cause stress that you still have to deal with, but you can take an inventory of your life. You can sit back, spend a half an hour, and think through what's unnecessary but giving me a lot of stress and shed it. I think that's really superb advice. Let's go to your personal anecdotes, because I told you I wanted to hear if you had any personal anecdotes or lessons from your own experience with performance anxiety. You've given a few, but I'm wondering if you have any more that you want to share.
Well, I'm going to tell you one that is pretty fun. I kind of alluded to it. Um, I did a production of Tosca a few years ago when I was in Sweden, and I was supposed to sing the tenor role because I've transitioned to tenor about 15 years ago, as you know. And it was the first time I was doing this role, and it's a tough one. It's one that requires great strength, and it's stuff that I was building up to. And but I was putting the work in, and this was for this little festival that I ran over there. And I had invited a colleague to come and direct the show. I had this baritone from the Met that I worked with years ago to come and do this show with us. And so rehearsals were set and everything. And the director that I had engaged wrote to me 2 days before we started rehearsals and told me that he was at this other festival and needed a vacation, so he wasn't going to be able to arrive for another week and a half. So I had to direct the show myself,
Wow.
thinking that when the guy comes in, I'd have the bare bones set up, then he'd take over from there. But he arrived and said, "Well, you've done a pretty good job. I don't want to interfere with what you're doing. You don't need me." So the thing became a very stressful situation where I was directing the show, running the festival, and singing the lead tenor role,
Oh, man.
a role that I was doing for the first time. So there are so many stories that happened with Tosca. I mean, there's a whole book of anecdotes that happened in Tosca that will make you laugh from now until next week. Well, there's a point in the show in the second act when my character comes in, has a confrontation with the baritone, and then he's taken out of the room to be tortured by two people. Well, these two guys were not singers, they were extras whose jobs were basically they show up on stage at a certain time and they take me off at a certain time. Well, those guys decided to go off at some point before I'm supposed to be taken off. They just walked off stage. So now I'm on stage, I'm supposed to be taken off, and we're trying to figure out how I get off stage to be tortured. So I did this. I got totally panicked. Like that was about half a minute there, and I'm thinking like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And the baritone who knows the show as well is looking at me, dude, what's going to happen? You know. So what happened is that I jumped at the baritone, who is the villain, and I grabbed him by the scruff of his costume and kind of push and pull against him, and I forced myself to fall on the ground, and there's this general chaos on stage. The soprano's running around trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, I'm crawling off stage while the music takes care of the rest. So I ended up in the torture room anyway, but it was a bizarre.
Did that affect the rest of your performance that day?
Oh, no. Actually, it could have. Because in that moment, absolute panic, because I had no idea what was going to happen after that, right? Because if I don't get off stage, the rest of the story doesn't work. I was just trying to figure out how to get myself off stage.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The panic did happen. Absolute dread happened that moment. I was deer in the headlights. I think for about half a minute, all you can see me still on stage trying to figure out what to do. But because I was prepared, I figured out something absolutely nuts and crazy to do. The audience didn't figure it out. Maybe a few people who know the opera very well probably laughed a little bit in their programs because they knew something weird had happened over there. But I managed to get off, and we continued the performance, and it went fine. You know, but that was the moment of dread for sure.
I bet in the performing arts, I can just imagine there's millions of stories like that. You know, and people.
Yeah, I have one more. Maybe
go ahead. Yeah, hit me.
I have one more that is not as positive as that. And it was just before I realized I was a tenor. It was a period when my voice started to crack a little bit. I was doing a performance of Traviata, and I walked in for the first rehearsal and my entrance, and my voice just went like that, you know. I was supposed to sing Madamigella Valeri, and it went Madamigella Valeri. My voice just
man.
The falsetto land. I laughed, you know. I was guys, I just came from the street. I have to go warm up a little bit. Everything will be fine. I spent the next few weeks keeping my voice from flipping out like that. Well, performances went fine. It never flipped in performance. And 2 weeks later, I had a performance. A conductor friend of mine put a program together for me of stuff that I had done a lot. Vaughan Williams' 5 musical songs, Dürerfler Requiem, a program specifically for me. I walked into the first rehearsal, and it's as if my throat was just tied in knots. I had no idea what happened.
Oh, boy.
I made it to the rehearsal, sang to everything, and the conductor came to me, and she said, are you okay? You sound a little bit husky today. I said, yeah. I don't know if it's allergies or something, you know. I got into the performance day, because we're supposed to have 2 performances. The first day, the first night, I knew that one of my great mentors, great conductor from Westminster Choir College, a guy named Joseph Flummerfelt, was in the audience that day. And so I wanted to do well. I literally, the feeling was like I was on stage and flames just came up and I was just going to go down. That was the sensation.
That's what you felt like. Wow.
That's what I felt like the whole performance song. I stuck it out. I did the performance. I did what I could, but I felt horrible. I felt like my voice wasn't working. Something was wrong. But if you look at my face, you would know it. Because I just was stoic. I just went through it, did everything, went off, took my applause, which I can't even remember what it was because all I could feel was flames.
Yeah.
Went to my dressing room, felt awful because I know it wasn't a good performance. And this conductor came to me and she said, you know I adore you, and that's why I put this program together for you. But something is not right with your voice. You should check it out. I've gotten somebody else to do the second show. I've never been fired from a show in my entire life.
Oh, boy.
It was the first time ever. But I figured she was right. And then 2 months later, I was warming up in France for a master class, and it became very clear to me I was a tenor, and that was a problem. And so anxiety at that point was because something was fundamentally wrong. I didn't know what it was. And that's what I meant. Very often you panic because something's happening wrong and you have no idea what it is.
Okay.
From one day to the next, you're doing great. And then suddenly you have no...
Just real quick, in that instance, so you discovered that the anxiety came from the fact that you were no longer a baritone, you were a tenor, and you had to find that out, through almost tripping over it, basically.
Yeah.
Did that experience, though, being fired, did that cause any scar tissue, what you've been talking about in terms of, memories that have affected you in future performances, or was just the realization that you're a tenor, not a baritone, enough to sweep that away?
That was enough because that explained it. Then I realized, well, I didn't mess up. It was just that, this is one of the hard things, about being a singer is that voices are extremely complex things. Mm-hmm. And you can spend a lifetime trying to figure out what is your nature, right? In classical singing, you're called a voice type. You're called a bass, you're called a baritone, you're called this. Very often you're trying everything you can to fill those shoes. So you don't know that you're actually producing sounds that fulfill what you're told you are, as opposed to discovering your true nature.
I see.
And that's something that takes time. And schools often, I think I had a teacher who probably knew what I was, but didn't want to take the responsibility of going through that change because it's not an easy thing to do. Yeah. I was being successful as a baritone, so just leave it alone, right? I get that, but and it did take me quite a long time to actually master my voice again as a tenor. I'm glad I did it. I didn't back away from it. I was like, that's information. I am a tenor, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm a very happy singer and a singing tenor now. So
he's a very happy singer, everybody, and I love hearing that, Ron. I can't thank you enough for these two episodes because I think you've given us a lot of information about how to confront performance anxiety, what to look for, what to think about doing. And I think all of the things you've said can transfer over to the person who's having performance anxiety because they got to give a toast at the wedding this weekend. All those things will help. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do these two shows, coming all the way from Spain to do these. He didn't fly out. We're doing this over Zoom, but I want to thank you for that. And I really wish you the best, Ron. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. Same to you, my friend. I enjoy these interviews so much because you're such a natural at this. I feel like I'm being interviewed by Larry King or somebody. It's like it flows so easily, and that's not always the case. I can tell you that. Awesome. I've done tons of interviews, and it's not all the time that you get somebody that you feel like you're in the flow with, in the zone, as we say in tennis.
Well, I really appreciate that. And a lot of that, I think, comes from, as a coach, really learning how to listen. That's the key as a coach, really being present and listening without thinking about what you're going to say next and all the stuff that we typically do as people. But that's really nice of you to say, and I can't thank you enough. So if you've enjoyed listening to the show, thank you all for tuning in. If you've enjoyed listening, please hit that subscribe or like button so that you can find out when I drop new episodes. And I've been saying this a lot lately. If you have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover, I'd love to hear from you. Email me. It's Matt@mattbrookscoaching.com. That's simple. Matt at mattbrookscoaching.com, and 2 T's in Matt, by the way. But shoot me an idea. I'd love to hear from you. And if it's something that I can pull off or feel good about, I will absolutely do it. So thanks for listening. And please tune in next week. I'm going to piggyback this series on performance anxiety with one episode about fear of failure, because fear of failure is very similar to performance anxiety. So that's what I'm going to do next week. Meanwhile, thanks again for listening. Be well, and I'll catch you next time on the Barrier Busting Podcast.